No, because I have kids at home right across the street.
Ma'am, you need to step
Don't
outside
push me again.
Nobody's pushing you.
Nobody
Just calm
cannot
down.
push me like that. Stop it. Stop it right now. Oh my God.
Ma'am, take a breath. We're not putting hands on you. Let's go outside.
The flashing blue and red lights cut through the early morning fog, but they are not nearly as loud as the woman screaming on the front lawn. Brandy stands with her face twisted in anger, her glasses sliding down her nose as she confronts the officers. No, because I have kids at home right across the street, she yells, her voice cracking with a mix of fear and defiance. When an officer tries to create space, her reaction is instant and aggressive. Don't push me again. Stop it, she shrieks, lunging forward with a clenched fist. The air is thick with the smell of alcohol and the feeling that things are about to go very wrong. You cannot push me like that. Stop it right now. She isn't just arguing, she is physically fighting back against the very people sent to help. This isn't just a loud argument anymore. It is the beginning of a violent struggle that will lead to serious felony charges. The sun has not yet risen over the quiet streets of Boscobel, Wisconsin, when the silence is shattered by a radio dispatch. It is exactly 6 a.m. on April 13, 2025, a time when most families are still tucked away in their beds. But on LaBelle Street, something is very wrong. Officers receive a report of a physical domestic disturbance in progress, a call that usually means high emotions and unpredictable danger. As the patrol cars pull up to the residence, the officers don't find a quiet house. Instead, they see the shadows of two people moving quickly on the front porch. The air is cold, but the argument happening outside is white hot. From the sidewalk, the officers can already hear the jagged edges of a man's voice and the sharp, defensive cries of a woman. This isn't just a verbal spat, it's a scene that looks like it has been escalating for hours. The officers step out of their vehicles, adjusting their gear and clicking their body cameras into place, knowing that every word said from this moment on will be recorded for the record. They walk toward the porch, ready to separate the pair, but the look in Brandy's eyes suggests that she isn't ready for the night to end or for the law to step in. As the officers step onto the porch, the air feels heavy with tension. Travis and Brandy are already shouting at each other, their voices clashing in a messy, loud argument. The porch is small, making the situation feel even more trapped and dangerous. Brandy's eyes are wide, and she is moving restlessly, while Travis stands his ground, looking frustrated and angry. When the officers try to talk, the pair barely listens, their anger at each other spilling over onto the police. She's calling you. Travis yells, pointing toward the house. Brandy ignores the officer's requests to calm down, her words coming out in a fast, drunken blur. The officers realize quickly that this isn't a situation they can solve with just a few words. They have to step between the two to keep them from getting physical, but every move the police make seems to make Brandy even more upset. The porch, which should have been a place of safety, has turned into a zone of pure chaos where no one is willing to back down. The situation on the porch quickly moves from a loud argument to a battle of wills. As an officer tries to step closer to calm things down, Brandy's attitude becomes sharp and defensive. Don't touch me, she snaps, pulling her arm back as if the officer's hand were made of fire. The officer speaks calmly, trying to explain that they are only there to help, but Brandy isn't listening. She stands with her shoulders hunched, her eyes darting between the police and Travis, treating every movement the officers make like an attack. Yes, ma'am, the officer responds, trying to keep his voice steady, I'm just going to have you stand right over here. But Brandy refuses to move even an inch. Every time the police reach out to guide her or keep her from stepping toward Travis, she shouts the same warning, don't touch me. Her refusal to cooperate creates a wall between her and the help she claimed she wanted when the police were first called. It becomes clear to everyone on the porch that Brandy is no longer just upset, she is drawing a line in the sand, and her anger is starting to turn into a physical challenge against the law. While Brandy continues to argue on the porch, one of the officers notices something out of the corner of his eye. A few feet away, a large truck is parked by the curb. As he walks closer to investigate, he sees small faces looking back at him through the glass. Inside the vehicle, young children are sitting alone, watching the flashing lights and the angry confrontation between the adults. The mood of the scene changes instantly. This is no longer just a loud fight between grown-ups, there are innocent lives involved who are caught in the middle of the mess. The officer quickly moves to check on their welfare, making sure they are safe and okay. When Brandy realizes the police are looking into her truck, her panic spikes. She starts shouting about her babies and her kids, but her words are hollow because she left them in a car while she stayed outside to drink and fight. The truck's secret raises the stakes for everyone. Now, the officers aren't just worried about a domestic disturbance, they are worried about the safety of children who have a front row seat to their mother's total meltdown. The tension on the front lawn finally breaks. As an officer continues to ask Brandy to step away from the truck for the safety of the children, she reaches her breaking point. Instead of listening, she lunges forward and strikes an officer, a move that changes everything in a split second. The officer acts immediately to stop the threat. In a blur of motion, he grabs Brandy and guides her to the grass, forcing her to the ground to keep her from hurting anyone else. Brandy hits the dirt with a loud cry, her face pressed against the lawn as the metal handcuffs click shut around her wrists for the first time. "You hit me." "You cannot hit an officer," the policeman shouts over her screams. Brandy continues to struggle, kicking her legs and yelling that she isn't resisting, even as she tries to wiggle out of his grip. The officers stand over her, breathless and firm, making it clear that the time for talking is over. She is no longer just a person in an argument, she is officially a person in custody, and the weight of her actions is finally starting to catch up with her. As the chaos with Brandy begins to settle into a tense standoff, a new figure emerges from the front door of the house. Jolene, the resident of the home, steps slowly onto the porch, her movements cautious and pained. The officers immediately notice why she had been hiding. Her face is marked with a fresh, visible injury. She holds her chin as if trying to keep herself together, her eyes reflecting the trauma of the night. The officers turn their attention to her, trying to figure out how a friendly fire gathering ended with a woman bleeding in the shadows. While Brandy continued to scream from the grass, Jolene stands quietly, the physical evidence of the domestic disturbance written across her face. She is the silent witness to the violence that the others are trying to deny. The officers realize that while Brandy is yelling about being the victim, the real victim has just stepped into the light, and her story is about to change everything for the people in handcuffs. The scene on the lawn reaches an emotional breaking point as the consequences of the night start to become real. Brandy is still on the ground, but her anger turns into a high-pitched panic when the officers mention the children in the truck. One officer looks at the chaos and speaks the words every parent fears, "So now you're in child services, right? I am going to call social services." The mention of the social services hits Brandy harder than the physical takedown. She begins to sob and plead, her voice shaking as she realizes her actions might cost her more than just a night in jail. "I have kids at home. Let me go so I can go home to my babies," she cries out. But the officers are firm. They explain that the children should never have been around this kind of violence, especially at 1 o'clock in the morning. The threat of losing her children hangs in the air like a heavy cloud, turning her earlier defiance into a desperate, messy display of regret. Even as Travis tries to argue, the focus remains on the children, who are finally moved away from the scene, leaving Brandy to face the cold reality that her meltdown has put her family's future in danger. As the officers turn their attention to Travis, the atmosphere remains thick with hostility. Travis, visibly intoxicated and angry, begins to taunt the officers as they attempt to search him for safety. When an officer asks if he has anything dangerous on him, Travis decides to raise the stakes with a shocking claim. "Oh, yeah. I have a gun," he says boldly. The officers instantly go on high alert, their hands moving toward their gear as they ask for the weapon's location. Travis gestures toward his pockets, enjoying the sudden surge of tension he has created. However, when pushed for the truth, he quickly changes his story with a smirk. "Oh, no I don't," he admits, revealing that the gun was nothing more than a lie designed to rattle the police. The officers do not find the joke funny. They continue the search with even more caution, frustrated by the misleading information and the constant games Travis is playing. By lying about a deadly weapon, Travis hasn't just been difficult, he has shown the officers that he is unpredictable and dangerous. What he meant as a taunt only makes the police more determined to keep him under control, proving that his attempt to stay in charge of the situation is failing miserably. With Brandy and Travis momentarily separated, the officers focus on Jolene to get the real story of how the night turned so violent. Jolene explains that what started as a nice friendly fire with burgers and hot dogs for the kids quickly went downhill because of alcohol. She tells the officers that both Brandy and Travis have drinking problems and had become heavily intoxicated and aggressive throughout the night. Jolene's voice trembles as she describes the moment the friendly gathering ended. She tried to walk Brandy home to end the tension, but Travis followed them and became violent. He didn't just push her, he pinned her against a tree and used a broken glass bottle he was drinking from to slash her across the face. Jolene explains that she didn't even realize how badly she was hurt until she felt her shirt getting wet with her own blood. She begged him to leave her property, but instead of leaving, Travis called the police and tried to flip the story to make himself look like the victim. Her statement paints a terrifying picture of a night fueled by drinks that ended in a bloody, unprovoked attack. As the officers continue to question Brandy, the weight of the night finally breaks through her wall of denial. The officer looks her in the eyes and asks directly if she was involved in the fight with Jolene. At first, Brandy tries to act like she doesn't know what happened, but then the truth slips out in a moment of drunken honesty. "I hit her face. I hit her face to my own face," Brandy admits, her voice dropping as she confesses to striking Jolene. When the officer asks if she used her fist, she confirms she used her right hand. This admission changes everything. The officer looks at her firmly and tells her, "You admitted to hitting her in the cheek, and you hit me." Brandy tries to take it back, saying she didn't mean to, but a simple sorry isn't enough to fix what has already been done. By admitting she used her hands on both a friend and a police officer, Brandy has handed the police the evidence they need to move from a simple investigation to a serious criminal case. The officers inform Brandy that she is under arrest for disorderly conduct and assault. Brandy's face crumples into a look of pure shock and disbelief. "For what? I didn't do anything," she screams as the officers lead her toward the back of the patrol car. The reality of the situation finally hits her, and her anger turns into a frantic, desperate plea for her family. "I have kids at home." Right across the street, she yells, her voice echoing through the neighborhood as she struggles against the officer's grip. She resists with everything she has, trying to prevent them from putting her inside the vehicle. "What did I do? I didn't do anything," she continues to cry out, but the officers remain firm, explaining that her actions, pushing a policeman and striking Jolene, have consequences that cannot be ignored. The struggle becomes physical as they try to get her into the seat. Brandy kicks and thrashes, even threatening to kick you in the face as the officers work to secure her seatbelt. Despite her screams and her claims of innocence, the door eventually clicks shut. Brandy is left sitting in the back of the car, separated from her children by a thick layer of glass and the weight of her own choices. The woman who started the night at a friendly fire is now headed to jail, leaving her babies behind in the care of others. Even after Brandy is locked in the patrol car, Travis refuses to leave the scene. He stands on the edge of the property, swaying slightly from the alcohol, and begins a loud argument with the officers about his rights. When the officers tell him he is no longer welcome on Jolene's property and needs to go home, Travis becomes a sidewalk lawyer. "That doesn't include a lawyer law versus cop law," he shouts, demanding to call his attorney on speed dial. He insists that as long as he is standing on the public sidewalk, the police have no right to touch him or make him move. He watches the officers with narrow eyes, flipping them off and claiming they are manhandling his sister while he stays just inches away from the private grass line. The officers try to remain patient, telling him to stay in the public area and stay away from Jolene, but Travis continues to shout insults and film with his phone. He believes that by staying on the sidewalk, he is safe from arrest, but he doesn't realize that his earlier actions with the glass bottle have already sealed his fate. The standoff on the sidewalk is just a brief pause before the law finally catches up with him. The officers turn their full attention back to the sidewalk, where Travis is still arguing. While he thinks he is safe because he is in a public area, the officers have now gathered enough evidence to move forward with his arrest. They walk toward him with a new level of seriousness. "At this time, you're under arrest," an officer says firmly. Travis looks stunned. "For what?" he asks, his voice losing some of its earlier confidence. The officer explains the gravity of the situation. He isn't just being picked up for being drunk or loud. He is being charged with aggravated assault because of the violent attack on Jolene involving the broken liquor bottle. The mood shifts instantly from a noisy argument to a somber legal reality. Travis, who had been acting like he was in control of the law, suddenly becomes quiet and cooperative. "Yes, sir." "Yes, ma'am." "I'm sorry," he says as he finally puts his hands behind his back and allows the cold metal of the handcuffs to lock around his wrists. The felony part of the night has officially begun. By using a weapon to hurt someone, he has turned a domestic call into a life-changing legal battle that could lead to years behind bars. Once the patrol car arrives at the Grant County Jail, the officers open the door to find Brandy is still in a state of total rage. Instead of calming down during the ride, the quiet of the car seems to have made her even more upset. As the officers lead her toward the booking room, she begins to scream at the top of her lungs, "Take them off! Take the off!" Inside the jail, the bright lights and the sound of locking doors do nothing to stop her. Brandy becomes a blur of motion, twisting her body and trying to pull away from the officers. When a female officer tells her that the handcuffs are staying on because of her behavior, Brandy makes a chilling promise: "I'm going to make it worth it. I'm going to do it." The officers try to stay professional, warning her that she is only earning herself more charges, but Brandy is past the point of listening. She shouts that the police are pissing her off and continues to claim she did nothing wrong, even though she is standing inside a jail cell. Her meltdown in the booking room is the final piece of evidence the officers need. It shows that even hours after the initial call, she is still out of control and unwilling to follow the law. The night that started with burgers and a fire has ended with Brandy fighting the guards in a cold, concrete room. The sun begins to rise over the Grant County Jail, marking the end of a long and violent night. For Brandy and Travis, the friendly fire gathering has turned into a list of serious crimes that will follow them for a long time. After reviewing the body cam footage and the statements from the scene, the police officially file the charges. Brandy, the mom who fought to stay out of handcuffs, faces a long list of counts. She is charged with simple assault for hitting Jolene, as well as battery on a law enforcement officer for her physical struggle with the police. She also faces charges for obstructing an officer and disorderly conduct because of her constant screaming and refusal to follow orders. Travis faces even more serious trouble. Because he used a broken glass bottle to hurt Jolene, he is charged with aggravated assault. He also faces charges for simple assault on a law enforcement officer and disorderly conduct. What started as a 6 a.m. domestic call ended with 2 people in jail and children left wondering what happened to their parents. As the officers finish their paperwork, the story of the drunk mom's meltdown serves as a dark reminder of how quickly alcohol and anger can destroy a family's peace. Both Brandy and Travis are left in their cells, waiting to see what the judge will decide about their future.